History hides its greatest kings beneath the dust of forgotten kingdoms, yet some rulers refuse to disappear. Their stories echo through time. One such figure is Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, the man the world simply calls Saladin. His legacy is wrapped in courage, wisdom, restraint, and a sense of justice that made even his enemies admire him. But Saladin's journey did not begin on a throne or inside a palace. It began in exile, uncertainty, and the shadow of powers much greater than himself. This is the untold rise of the man who changed the fate of empires, a childhood on the move. Saladin was born in Tikrit around 1137 or 1138, into a Kurdish family that had neither crowns nor vast estates. His father, Najm al-Din Ayyub, served under the powerful Turkish warlord Imad al-Din Zengi, a man determined to push back the Crusader states. On the night Saladin was born, fate showed how unstable life would become. His father and uncle were expelled from Tikrit, forced to leave their home under darkness, carrying nothing but loyalty to their commander and hope for a safer future. Their next home became Mosul, then a thriving military center under Zengi's growing authority. While most boys learned games and play, Saladin grew up listening to generals whisper about alliances, betrayals, and wars. He was still a child, yet every conversation around him shaped the instincts of a future ruler, learning power before holding it. As the family moved from Mosul to Baalbek and eventually Damascus, Saladin saw firsthand how rulers kept their power, and how quickly they could lose it. He learned that loyalty was fragile, politics was dangerous, and the only security came from discipline and patience. Nur ad-Din, the son of Zengi, became Saladin's first true mentor. Known for his strict piety and sharp leadership, Nur ad-Din's court became a living classroom for the young Kurdish noble. Saladin studied theology, law, and literature, but his real education came from watching how rulers dealt with trouble, with silence, calculation, and restraint. He wasn't yet a warrior, he wasn't yet a leader, but he was learning how power moved behind closed doors, and those lessons would stay with him forever. Egypt, the turning point. In 1163, a crisis in the crumbling Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt opened the door to destiny. Egypt's vizier asked Nur ad-Din for help against internal rivals and Crusader pressure. Nur ad-Din sent one of his greatest generals, Saladin's uncle, Shirkuh. And at his side, as always, was Saladin. Egypt was a place of shifting loyalties and constant conspiracies. Armies changed sides, viziers betrayed their allies, Crusaders interfered, and cities were taken only to be lost again. Through it all, Saladin watched silently as his uncle maneuvered through chaos, striking hard when needed and negotiating when necessary. Finally, in 1169, Shirkuh became Egypt's vizier. But only weeks later, he died suddenly, leaving behind a power vacuum in one of the world's richest lands. To everyone's surprise, the young, quiet Saladin was appointed vizier. He had no powerful tribal backing, no long history of command, and no noble title of his own. He was chosen because the Fatimid elite thought he would be easy to control. They were wrong. A quiet man who rebuilt a kingdom. Saladin moved carefully but decisively. He replaced unreliable generals with loyal officers, many of them Kurds who had followed his family for years. He restructured the treasury, strengthened defenses, and rebuilt Egypt's armies. He didn't threaten the Fatimid Caliph. Not openly, but slowly, step by step, he shifted power away from the palace and toward his own administration. Then, in 1171, when the Fatimid Caliph Al-Adid fell ill, Saladin made his most pivotal move. He ordered Friday prayers in Cairo to be said in the name of the Abbasid Caliph of Baghdad. With one quiet command, the Fatimid dynasty, rulers of Egypt for nearly 200 years, ended. There was no rebellion, no chaos. Egypt accepted the change because Saladin had already become the true center of power. The foundation of his empire was set, uniting a divided world. Egypt gave Saladin wealth, armies, and influence, but the rest of the Muslim world was still fractured. Damascus, Aleppo, Mosul, all ruled by rival emirs and old families who distrusted each other. Saladin knew unity would matter more than any battle. In 1174, when Nur ad-Din died in Damascus, Saladin marched north, entering the city peacefully. But Aleppo resisted fiercely, fearing Saladin's dominance. Mosul refused to submit. Diplomacy, war, negotiation, and patience all became weapons in Saladin's hands. Bit by bit, city by city, he built the Ayyubid Empire, not through terror or greed, but through a shared vision. A united Muslim front strong enough to reclaim Jerusalem. The battle that changed everything, Hattin. The spark came in 1187 when the infamous Crusader lord Renaud de Chatillon attacked a Muslim caravan, breaking a long-standing truce and threatening pilgrims under safe passage. Saladin saw it not as a raid, but as an insult to divine order. He summoned his armies from Egypt, Syria, Arabia, and Mesopotamia. The Crusaders, led by King Guy of Jerusalem, marched out to meet him. Under the blazing July sun, on the hills known as the Horns of Hattin, the Crusader army walked into Saladin's trap. Cut off from water, exhausted and surrounded, they broke ranks and fell apart. It was a disaster for the Crusader states. King Guy was captured. Reynold, the man who triggered the war, was executed by Saladin himself, and then, with his enemy broken, Saladin swept through Palestine. One stronghold after another surrendered. Finally, Jerusalem fell. But unlike the Crusaders in 1099 who had massacred its population, Saladin entered the city peacefully. He allowed the poor to leave without ransom. Mosques and churches were protected. Pilgrims were granted safety. Even Europe, shocked by the loss of Jerusalem, spoke of Saladin with reluctant respect. The Lionheart arrives. The fall of Jerusalem triggered the Third Crusade, led by Europe's most feared warrior, Richard the Lionheart. Their clash was legendary. Richard recaptured Acre. Saladin countered along the coast. At Arsuf, Saladin attacked repeatedly, but Richard's heavy infantry held the line. Yet despite victories, Richard could not retake Jerusalem. His army was too small, too far from home, and too divided by internal rivalries. In 1192, both leaders, exhausted by years of war, agreed to a truce. Jerusalem would remain under Muslim rule, but Christian pilgrims could visit freely. It was a peace built on respect, not defeat. The final days of a king without gold. After the treaty, Saladin spent his days traveling through his empire, stabilizing cities, resolving disputes, and preparing for the future. But the strain of decades of war and endless responsibility began to weigh on him. In early 1193, he fell ill in Damascus. He died with almost no money in his treasury. Years of charity, gifts to soldiers, and support for the poor had emptied his coffers. There wasn't enough gold left to pay for his funeral. He left behind no palace, no hoarded wealth, only a sword, a cloak, a library of books, and a reputation that transcended empires. The legacy that outlived every empire. The Ayyubid Empire fractured soon after his death, divided among his sons and brothers. Yet while his political legacy weakened, his moral legacy grew stronger than ever. In the Muslim world, he became a symbol of justice, unity, and humility. In Christian Europe, he appeared in legends and romances as the noble enemy, admired even by those who fought against him. Across centuries, through invasions, revolutions, and new borders, Saladin's name returned again and again. A reminder that power ruled without cruelty can outlast kingdoms built on fear. He left behind one question that still echoes through history. Can a ruler's justice endure longer than his empire? For Saladin, the answer, written not in monuments but in memory, was yes. And that is the story of Saladin. A ruler born in exile, shaped by war, and remembered not for the empire he built, but for the justice he carried even at the height of power. If this journey through history moved you, inspired you, or taught you something new, make sure to hit that. Like and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. And until next time, history never sleeps, and neither do its legends.